time to hammer.
Oh, I gotta really try hard.
Shut it down!
Somehow it's the best.
After the credits.
A Yum Chunks podcast.
Yum Chunks!
Welcome, Gothamites, one and all, to After the Credits, episode 44, a Yum Chunks podcast. On tonight's episode, we will be discussing the newest entry in the DC universe, maybe Joker. Period. That's the name of the movie. With us tonight, we have Sean Davis. How you doing, Sean?
I'm doing great. Maybe. Period.
And we have Ryan Davis. What's up, Ryan?
Hey, great to be here.
Good. Yeah, it's been a little while since we've all talked, so it's good. And we have our resident DC apologist, Chris Schmidt. How you doing today?
Indeed. You're doing indeed? Yeah.
I'm ready for lots of apologies. No, actually, well, we'll get to it when we get to it. At any rate, good to hear all of your guys' voices. It's been a little while since our summer, what did we call that episode? Summer
blowout.
Summer bonanza blast? Summer
banana eating blast. No, summer blowout. Summer blowout.
Yeah, it's been a little over a month since then.
No, it's been like 2 months.
Yeah, I think it's been 2 months.
All right, well, we'll still hit that 50 episode mark by the end of the year, I'm confident.
Yeah, that's fine.
We've had a little bit of post-summer dry spell in movies, and I think things are going to be starting to ramp up again pretty soon. So, looking forward to the stuff that's on our way. But we have had a little oasis here during our dry spell in the new Joker film. But before we get into that, let's take a good old trip around the Chunkfire, shall we?
I want to join that trip.
Good, you're starting then.
Okay. Whoa. Well, as part of the Chunkfire trip, I also took another trip. Actually, I got back from this trip yesterday. I was in Arkansas again. Good old Arkansas, the Big Apple.
If you love it so much, why don't you just move there?
Oh, no.
No, I don't. I mean, I don't love it so much.
Well, was it the same reason as last time? And if it was, would you care to share that? And if it wasn't, would you care to share why you were there anyway?
It was, loosely the same. Basically, I was doing pre-production on a film that we will be filming with the same crew that from the movie I made earlier this year. Next year, so we're doing pre-production stuff, and it's going to be a kind of like western-y movie set in the 1800s, but in the Ozarks. Okay. So not quite a desert western town, but kind of like a hilly, mountainy Appalachian town. Anyways, and it's really cool because they bought this huge lot of land, this old cotton warehouses. Like hundreds of years old, and we're building an actual like town in this like empty field around these warehouses. So that's what I was doing. I was doing lots of manual labor for the last week, basically waking up at 6 and then digging holes and building with raw hands and muscle and
I saw you digging a hole on Instagram, Sean.
I saw that too.
You're digging that hole real good.
I've never seen
there were
you
so
do
many
anything
tools.
cooler.
I didn't know there were so many tools for digging holes. I learned so much. And I got to drive a tractor, which was awesome. And I was pretty good at it by the end. I was moving giant logs, like big old 600-pound logs with a tractor. And probably, I was not qualified in any way.
Like, don't you need a license? But I don't know.
I don't know. I mean, it is Arkansas.
Yeah.
So that's what I was doing out in Arkansas, and it was great. And I'm excited to, continue doing pre-production, and then start making the movie next summer sometime. So
cool.
But that was fun. What else? Well, aside from those trips, I've watched it's been, like I said, 2 months since we last recorded, so there's a ton of stuff I've watched and read and stuff. But I think some of the highlights, let's see. I played this video game called Control, which I really enjoyed. Highly recommend. It's kind of like Fear, but like also a third-person Metroidvania-y kind of fun. Trapped in a singular house with odd things happening. It's kind of hard to explain, but it's really good. I recommend it. And I watched this TV series called The Terror. I watched the first season. Has anyone heard of this show?
No, I have not heard of it.
It was on AMC,
I've heard of it.
And this currently the second season is on now. But it's one of those series that's like an anthology series. So each season is a completely different like thing, different story, and unrelated from season to season. I guess like American Horror Story kind of. I guess. But so I just saw the first season. But the first season was awesome. It was basically about this British, based on true events supposedly, but this British naval expedition to find the Arctic passage, in the 1800s, and this ship this expedition went missing, and this is just like the fictionalized version of it as a kind of gothic horror tale of what happened to this crew, this 1800 British, shipping crew that went missing and the horrors that befell them. It's really good. I recommend it. It's spooky and weird, and you learn a lot about the British naval hierarchy, which is what sign me up for that. It's fun. What else? Oh, and then last thing I'll mention is I just read this book, and I'm going to nerd out a little bit real fast. It's called The Invention of Nature, and I usually don't read nonfiction. I rarely, if ever, read nonfiction, but this book is a biography of this guy called Alexander von Humboldt, and he is the greatest human being to have ever lived. You guys, I'm not exaggerating that much, but basically, it was this guy. He lived in the late 1700s to the 1800s. And he's not known in the Western Hemisphere or in the United States and like Britain and Canada very much. He's really well known in Latin America. But he's like an amazing scientist. I don't know why they don't teach him in schools or teach about him. But basically, he's the guy who, like, our understanding of nature and the world is so much drawn from like his science and his research and his writings. And his life was like a crazy Forrest Gump version of like meeting famous people in the 1800s. Like he met and was good friends with the German writer and poet Goethe. He was like the advisor to King Wilhelm. He was an advisor to Napoleon. He met Napoleon multiple times. He went on so he finally got an expedition money, and he went on an expedition to Latin America during the 1800s, and he traveled the Amazon with just him in like a boat collecting animals and plants and just like this crazy menagerie down the Amazon River. And he met Simón Bolívar, and Bolívar was hugely inspired by him. Like all the revolutions in Latin America can be traced back to like the ideas that Humboldt had. He met Thomas Jefferson and James Madison as Jefferson was president. He met Charles Darwin. All of these people were like hugely inspired and originated from the ideas that the scientist Humboldt had. John Muir, Walt Whitman, Henry David Thoreau. Our current understanding of environmentalism and conservationism, and just what nature is, I'm ranting and no one else has said anything for like 5 minutes, but I can't go on enough about this guy.
I don't want to stop you because you're on a roll, but I'm going to say, are you sure that you weren't watching Doctor Who?
Seriously, it's crazy how much this guy has influenced all of our. He's as important as Newton, as Da Vinci, and all of this stuff, but they do not teach him. It's kind of crazy how obscure he has become in terms of modern, American or British kind of understanding of history and science.
I was got to say, it sounded like you were talking about Doctor Who or the fat baby from Hysteria. Does anyone remember Hysteria?
Nope.
The Animaniacs spinoff that was on Warner Brothers Saturday morning.
Oh, I vaguely remember.
And all the characters had direct influence in history. I'm the only one who watched Hysteria.
Yeah, I don't know. That doesn't ring a bell.
Ryan, I thought you would for sure.
All
the other ones.
I'm going to look this up right now.
Freakazoid and Pinky and the Brain. And
I remember Freakazoid.
Well, anyway, Sean, what was the show called again, or the movie? What was it?
Well,
think it was a
it's
book.
a book. Yeah, it's not.
I forgot you want.
That's why we
even
tuned out,
less
Sean.
exciting.
We
What's
don't
that?
care about books.
I know. As soon as I mentioned book and nonfiction, I mean, I would have tuned out if it
Yeah,
wasn't
we
for
were-
me talking.
we were done.
But seriously, like, it's funny because you would think that what I've explained would have been prone to a crazy movie or a biography or a series, but there's not. Like, that's what I'm saying. Like, it's crazy how unknown this guy is for as amazing as he is and how influential he was as a person. And he lived to like 90 too. Like, he wrote a ton, like Cosmos, you know, the like series Cosmos, and that originates, that term, just the idea of cosmos originates from him. Like, I could go on and on about how important this guy is, but everyone listening, look him up. Let's all make Humboldt important.
Apparently,
again.
there's a bust of his head in Central Park.
There you go. And that's the thing. There's a ton of like streets and parks and I don't know, waterfalls and monuments kind of named after him throughout, because in the late 1800s, you know, when his fame was at its height, he was considered like one of the most important people in the world. But yeah, and like Ryan, do you remember when we were kids and we went on vacation to Oregon to the sand, and there's a national park called Humboldt Park.
Oh yeah.
I mean, it's named after him. I mean, he never went to Oregon specifically, but his influence, that's what I'm saying. There's lots of parks and just like all this. Anyways, look him up. His name's Alexander von Humboldt. He was a Prussian scientist. He was great. And our understanding in the world a lot of that is owed to him. So there's our little, the more you know, for this episode. Anyways, that's me. I ranted. I did my rant. So now it's someone else's turn to rant.
Well,
Chris or Ryan, go for it.
Well, I was going to say I wanted to kind of follow up with that inspiring tale of a genuine, decent, excellent example of a human being by saying that I spent the last 2 weeks or so watching nothing but Riverdale. So, you know, it was a easy transition.
Pretty equivalent.
Yeah.
Right, who thinks he's about to recommend this?
I'm
I'm on the fence.
I have prior knowledge, so I won't comment.
Oh,
Okay.
right, that's true. I won't spend too much time on this. It's a. You know what? I need to still digest how I feel about the show entirely. I can't.
So you bring it up.
I can't fully recommend it at this time.
How sexy is it?
Stay tuned in our next episode to see if I recommend this show.
I've already decided that you haven't. I mean, I think the safe bet is that if Ryan brings something up, he's not going to recommend it unless proven otherwise.
I will say this: they cast nothing but the most attractive people on the planet to be in the show.
So you're saying
Like,
it's super sexy?
it is.
Because
It's quite
that
sexy.
term is literally thrown around in every article I've ever read about Riverdale.
Like, the librarian is like 80 years old and she is sexy. The janitor mopping the floors in the background is like, dang, what is that guy up to?
Archie's World just had it going on, man.
Yeah, it did. Actually, I do want to share this one quick other thing. I went to see The Matrix last night in the theaters. I don't know if you guys knew this, but for the 20th anniversary, they re-released it.
Didn't know it was the 20th anniversary either.
Which is
kind
kind
of the 20th, but I didn't know they released it. That's cool.
Yeah, in fact, actually, to be honest, the only reason I knew about it is when I went to go see Joker, I saw on the marquee The Matrix, and I was like, wait, what? And then I looked it up, and yeah. So I returned the next evening to watch it, and they were showing it in the 4DX thingamajig that Sean mentioned, like, I think that was the last episode. Or
Was
two
it a
episodes.
nightmare?
It was just awful. Well, I
Wait,
mean, it
so
was
you
entertaining.
You did 4D with the Matrix. Whoa, all right.
Yeah, so they not only re-released the film, but someone had to go in there and program those seats to jostle me around for 2 hours. It was weird because the seat would move, and I won't get too much into it. Sean already explained it. But even when the camera would just rotate, and the chair like said, "Oh, well, we got to rotate too because the camera is." And it's like, okay, come on, we don't need this, do we? Anyway, it was entertaining. Plus, I love that movie. I'll watch it anytime.
I haven't seen it in a very long time, but I heard that a fourth one is in production with all the
Indeed.
same writers and crew and actors. Everybody's back on board to do number 4. So
Yeah,
that's
so-
interesting.
Indeed.
You know?
Yeah, so it should be exciting. Yeah, so that's my fire story.
Okay. Chris, what you up to?
I'm going to rapid fire right now. Here we go. Carol and Tuesday. Seriously let down by it. Don't recommend it. Catherine.
All right.
Still a fantastic game. Everybody should play it. That's it.
Okay.
That's it. That's it.
Oh, you didn't even have to go that rapid fire. Chris,
Oh.
The funny thing is, Chris, you haven't been on even longer than most people. You weren't in the last 2 episodes that we recorded.
Nope.
So it's been like 3 months since you've even been on.
I know.
And that's all you got?
Uh,
Come on, tell us about
Also, I
metal
feel-
detecting.
I feel like you bring up Catherine and how much you love it every other Chunkfire.
That's because, goddammit, I love that. I love it.
I'm not
just
saying it's bad. I'm just saying. At this point, I think we know how you feel about that game.
Well, you're going to keep hearing it because since it got re-released, and I just finished it. It's fresh on my mind, so you'll just keep hearing it. It's going to keep coming back because it's that good.
Fair enough.
All right, fair enough. Chewy,
Yeah.
that brings us to you.
Last time I was on the show was in mid-August, and in that time I've started teaching again. I'm back on my feet. I'm working. It means I'm also very busy and very tired a lot, but I'm happy to be back to work. Somewhere in there, and you guys have heard about this a whole bunch, but how I lost my Spider-Man save file and I had to start over and all that. So somewhere in there I finished Spider-Man. Won't dwell on that too long, but
Nice.
I will just say that we are blessed with how much good Spider-Man content we've gotten the last couple of years.
Yeah.
It's been all hits for me. It's all hit exactly where I wanted to as a video game. The last movie hit exactly as I wanted for a Spider-Man movie. The animated one, Spider-Verse, everything's been great. But yeah, video game, add it to the bunch. Lots of good Spider-Man content.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but just tangentially related because of Spider-Man. I think it's been so long that since our last episode, there has been both the schism of Sony and Marvel with Spider-Man dropping out of the MCU and the reunification of Spider-Man back into the MCU.
Yeah, well,
so that's fun.
Yeah, that was weird. I got real scared for a minute because I think I had decided that Far From Home is my favorite Spider-Man movie, and I saw it again since then. I think I saw it 3 times in theaters, and I think I still stand by that. I think it is still my favorite Spider-Man movie. But I got really scared when they said they weren't going to do it anymore with the same team, and then they figured it out, and now we're going to get one more Spider-Man movie to complete that trilogy, and Spider-Man's going to pop up in a couple more MCU movies, and I'm fine with that. At least if they know how many they have to work with, they can figure out how they're going to proceed, which is fine with me.
And even if it's just part of a marketing kind of stunt, I still think it's great that Tom Holland was supposedly pivotal in reuniting it.
Absolutely. Everybody likes Tom Holland.
Exactly.
Everybody's in his team, and he's in our team. He's, so that's good. That
brings me joy.
It's
joy
fun.
warms my heart.
It's funny that all happened in our gap since the last episode, and it's basically resolved at this point. So it's really not even worth talking about.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's funny. So anyway, that's cool. Beat Spider-Man. I have a film recommendation. It's called Support the Girls. I don't know if you guys have ever heard that title. The title is a play on words because it's a movie about a team of waitresses who work at a very Hooters-esque restaurant bar. And so,
I think I have heard of this. It sounds familiar now that you're describing it.
So Support the Girls is like a bra pun. But it's kind of, if you think about the plot, it's kind of a grown-up version of Waiting. If you guys can imagine, have you guys seen Waiting?
Yeah,
of course. Yeah.
And everybody's kind of like in college and trying to figure out what the next stage of their life is going to be, and everyone's frustrated, but everyone's kind of goofing off because stakes aren't super high yet. This is all about a bunch of women who are past that. Like, they never figured out what the next stage of life is going to be. A lot of them are single moms. A lot of them are struggling with money. And the main character is the manager, who's kind of just trying to help all these women out because they know that they have a lot of issues in their lives. So it's mostly from the manager's perspective, trying to put all these metaphorical fires out with all of her Hooters girls, basically. I think it's on Hulu. But yeah, like I said, it's like a grown-up Waiting, both in tone, both in subject matter. It's got its moments of comedy, but it's a little bit more of a drama. So I recommend that one. And then finally, a couple weekends ago for my birthday, I went to Vegas. I had a quick weekend trip and drove up Friday night, left on Sunday afternoon. On that Saturday, 2 noteworthy things happened. What I thought was going to be the most noteworthy one was on Saturday evening, we went to Fremont Street and we saw a free Smashmouth concert.
Aren't all Smashmouth concerts at this point free?
Well, here's the thing: is that the last time I saw Smashmouth was, I think, in 2007 or so. Ryan, I think I saw them with you actually.
Sounds familiar.
But it was at Del Mar Fair. I was up in the nosebleeds, and this was at the tail end of their everybody forgetting about them before they showed back up as a meme. But now they're a meme, so they there's a little bit more interested in Smashmouth, so they're doing shows again. But I'd always looked up whenever they come to a local casino to perform, which is pretty much all they do now, and they're always co-headlining with Sugar Ray or another one of those 90s bands, and then they sell the tickets for $70, and I'm like, I'm not gonna pay that much. So I saw that they were doing a free show on the weekend of my birthday in Vegas, and I'm like, oh, that's cool. That's really easy to do. So went there. I'm not going to spend too much time talking about it, but it was kind of a mess. As you can imagine, Smashmouth putting a show on in the year 2019, it was a bit of a mess, but it was a delightful free show, Fremont Street style mess that you can imagine. They pulled it together enough by the end to do a really All-Star and I'm a Believer and all the other really big hits really well by the end of the show. But yeah, I mean, I'll just say this. I think it's possible I may have seen the last ever Smashmouth concert. If not, I think it's possible I saw my last ever Smashmouth concert, because from what I saw, I don't know if I'd buy tickets to that, but I would definitely go see them again for free, but I don't know when that's going to happen again anytime nearby soon. So, but in anticipation to that trip, we were trying to look for something to do on Saturday afternoon beforehand to spend some time that wasn't too expensive, and Lindsey Ellis, one of my favorite YouTubers, tweeted that she was doing a free lecture at a library out in the Las Vegas suburbs on the same day at 3:00. So we're like, oh, cool, perfect. I don't know if any of you guys are familiar with Lindsey Ellis besides Sean. I know you watch her, right?
I watch her. Yeah, I watch her all the time. I haven't talked to you since her last video about the Disney live action, which is very apropos after our Lion King episode.
Yeah, I was going to bring that up, and I still will, but yeah, she's great. I love all of her video essays. She's maybe my favorite YouTuber. She's definitely in the top 3. But just the stars aligned. We were able to go see the show with enough time to go back to our hotel and get ready for the Smashmouth show later. It filled up, and it was crazy because I've worked lots of these type of events when I worked at a library, where they have a speaker come talk about some, topic. And you always have the senior citizens from the area who are there because they just do whatever the library is putting on. So it was very strange. You had about a quarter to a third of the audience were just that crowd who were like, I don't know what this is, but I'm old, and this is free.
I'm at the library.
Yeah, so I may as well just wander in and sit down because my legs are tired and I'll listen to what this girl has to say. And then the rest of it was actually people like me who were big fans of her YouTube channel. So it was a little strange being in that crowd. Some people getting her obvious, she referenced herself a lot. She, a lot of her sayings and the jokes that she makes throughout her series. She said those things, and you could tell, me and the rest of the audience are like, oh, she said the thing. But she did a talk about science fiction and how alien language is handled in science fiction. So she talked about a lot the movie Arrival, certain episodes of Star Trek, the MCU, and she basically broke it down into, okay, here are the categories of different types of alien languages, or how humans learn to communicate with aliens. Here's the different categories of types of aliens themselves, and she went through all these different movies and kind of broke it down and explained it. It was like watching one of her video essays live, which was it was just as funny and just as well researched. So that was very good.
I was gonna say, is it recorded? Is it anywhere that you could watch? It's not on her main channel.
No, I get the impression that it won't ever be, because she dropped something that implied that she had done this talk at other times in the past, and that she'd be I got the impression she'd be working on it and refining it. So so it sounds like it won't be, because it sounds like something that she does from time to time. Maybe one day when she retires, that lecture she'll make a video for it. But yeah, it was great. It was a good time. Afterwards, I got a picture with her, got to chat just a little bit, and then I brought my Rent DVD, and she autographed it. Her video essay about Rent looked pretty and do as little as possible as the video that I discovered her with. And then after that, I pretty much binged her whole channel. So she was a good sport about it because she notoriously hates Rent, and she kind of looked disgusted when I pulled it out of my bag. And she was kind of like, "Can I be mean about this, or are you a huge Rent fan?" I'm like, "Oh no, write whatever you want. It's fine." And, so that was good. That was a fun time.
What did she write?
Actually, I have it next to me. She said, where it says Rent, underneath it, she wrote "is bad," and then she wrote "thing bad," and then signed her name. Thing bad is one of the things that she says a lot in her YouTube essays. So that was exciting and that was fun. I'm getting old because I enjoyed the library lecture in Vegas more than being out on the strip and watching a free rock concert.
That's fascinating, though. It's just funny that, I guess that's what YouTubers do to supplement. She's well known enough that she probably is invited to those things, but
oh yeah, the library director of events said in his intro to her that he reached out to her like a year ago, and that's how long it took for them to set it up because she's so busy and she has so many things going on. She's writing a book. She was promoting her book partially. She's writing a sci-fi book, and it comes out next year.
That's cool.
So she was somewhat promoting that, but I guess she's really busy and she's not struggling at all. She's got lots of projects happening. So
I know she works for NPR now too. So
NPR, and I didn't know that, but she does a series for PBS about literature. That's kind of it's called It's Lit, and it's kind of in her video essay style, but it's a little bit more youth friendly. So those are good too. But anyway, so that's how I celebrated my birthday. I went to a library lecture and I went to a Smashmouth concert. So there you go. Happy birthday to me. And that's all I bring to the fire this week. So shall we move on?
Yes, good fire. Yeah, well then let's jump into the main course, and we're going to be talking about Joker. Before we get into the details and the summary, obviously spoiler alert. And actually I would probably recommend not listening, even if you have a mild interest in watching the Joker and think, I don't care. It might be best to avoid spoilers on this one. I don't know. Maybe, I don't know what you guys think. We'll get into it in the details. But yeah, spoilers forthcoming. So before the discussion, hey Ryan, what happened in Joker?
All right, let me explain to you this movie. So it's interesting you said that no spoilers, because it's hard to really point out a plot that would be spoiled so much as you would be maybe spoiling what is just the story of a man.
Yes.
He is a sad clown man, but a man nonetheless. So this is the story of Arthur Fleck. And, he's a sad clown man. He's a little down on his luck. He lives with his mom. He has no plans or motivation or direction in life whatsoever. He kind of gets picked on. It's one of those. But anyway, through complete random circumstance, he gets a gun. And then he completely through random circumstance shoots 3 people. And then completely through random circumstance starts a social movement. And then he decides that he's going to get revenge on the people that he's been picked on by shooting a celebrity on TV. And then he becomes the Joker. And that's
there's dancing.
And then he dances. He dances at the end. And throughout.
And then Batman happens, and it surprised the whole thing is not Joker's origin. It's actually just an extended Batman origin.
Batman.
Correct.
Yep, that's.
I don't.
Fairly accurate.
It's in terms of story elements.
Yeah, there's not. In terms of, you're right. You're absolutely right. The plot. There's not a plot that kind of. There is obviously, but it's not a heavily plot driven. It's a much more character driven thing, which is, I think, to credit in some regard, most regards. Yeah. But we'll get into. Yeah, I don't know.
Certainly, really, if I was going to tell someone or describe this movie to someone or summarize this movie for someone, I would wouldn't even talk about the story. I would just talk about, I would talk about Joaquin Phoenix and his performance, because that is the movie for me.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, guys, we live in a society.
Ugh.
Guys, can I just...
When he was on TV and he said something about society, I was like, he did it. He said the thing. to the annoyance of people sitting around me, I'm sure.
I like this film. I think it was a good film. I don't know if I was expecting a stronger reaction going into it than I have. I think that it was really good. There wasn't anything specific that I could pick apart as like I thought was bad about it. I think the things that I maybe were not as in love with were more just I think kind of what you were saying about the story. I feel like kind of the story lacked maybe some depth that was kind of happening. But I think the character stuff all still worked really well. I don't know. That's a kind of an ambiguous, wishy-washy approach. But in general, I think it was a well-made movie, even if I wasn't kind of drawn to every aspect of it. I don't know. I'm still percolating. What do you guys think?
We will help you figure out how you feel, I'm sure. I enjoyed it as a fan of well-made movies. I thought it was well directed and the performances were good and it was well shot and edited and had good pacing, especially for a comic book movie, quotes, with no like action scenes really. I thought it was still really well paced and it kept my interest the whole time. As a fan of Batman and or DC stuff, I don't really know that I like this depiction of the Joker character very much. I think Joaquin Phoenix delivers a fantastic performance given the material. I just have some things about this depiction of the character that kind of bug me a little, which is kind of a bit of a sour note. But again, Joker origins have never really been that important. In fact, he says it himself in I think Killing Joke. If I'm going to have an origin, I prefer it be multiple choice. So if there's a subpar Joker origin that exists, you can kind of just ignore it because there's not really a Joker origin anyway. So it doesn't. The problems I have with this story don't bother me that much, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think it makes sense. Chris, we haven't heard from you in forever.
5 hours.
So lay it on us.
I don't think it comes as any surprise that I love this film.
Nope.
I do have some problems with it, but I think overall the performance from Joaquin Phoenix and some of the supporting cast, even though they really don't get a lot to do, I do like his story overall. I like the elements that make it Joker's origin. I do kind of agree with the kind of not backlash, but like the warnings that people have been saying about the film, because I don't think the film itself actually lands on either side of whatever message it's trying to get across.
I mean, it's kind of a funny way to put it, but I know exactly what you're saying. I guess to me, a little simpler would be like, I don't know what the message is. I guess that's the message is kind of dilute. It's either too obvious or it's so obscure that it loses all meaning.
Well, I think anytime it tries to push any kind of message, it's always obvious. But I think there are things in the movie that directly contradict itself to make where the message gets kind of lost.
Exactly. Anyway, sorry. Continue on, Chris.
I think that was really it. I mean, I'd be interested to hear your guys' pain points. Overall, I don't have any anything negative to say about it other than his final performance on that late night show towards the end of the movie.
Okay, well, we'll get to that in a second. Ryan, what did you think?
I was so absorbed in his performance that I really had to take a long time or a few days to just digest, okay, what happened in this movie? Like, everything was so steeped in his just character. And then it was like, okay, well, maybe this is, don't then focus on that part of it and just think about, well, who was he? Who was this man? And through there I will get some sort of meaning from the film. But I think that's one reason that I didn't love the movie. I guess I'm still ultimately still kind of confused about how I feel about the movie, if I'm being honest. But because he didn't really feel like he had a lot of agency over who he was. He was just more the product of circumstance, which is a fine story to tell. But at the end of the day, if that's 90% of the movie, I felt like I didn't really get a lot either.
Right.
If his quote unquote triumph, or not getting too much into the message at this point, but whatever his thing is, you want to call it at the end of the film, right? It's maybe some sort of vindication or gratification or whatever. It's like, okay, I mean, all right. I don't feel really that strongly about it. I didn't really feel, So I was like, okay. And so I think that's kind of where I'm left, just feeling about this film as a whole, is that I don't think it was a bad film by any measure. I think it was well made, well shot, well acted, all the things you want to put those together. But just my reaction to the film, just feeling about the thing is, I guess I'm still trying to process that. So maybe I'll come to a conclusion by the end of this conversation.
Interesting. Yeah. I think we all need to work this out.
It's interesting because, I pretty much agree, even with you, Chris. I mean, like I was saying, I don't have anything negative. I really don't have any, like, oh, this part sucked or this element of it sucked. It's less that there were things that were bad about it and just things that maybe didn't quite work for me, but in general, I thought, I just really thought it was well made, but it never really fired. It never engaged me. Well, that's not true. It's not that it never engaged me, but it was emotionally confusing. I guess that's what it is.
That's a good way of putting it.
Yeah, that's
where you have moments of empathy and you have moments of familiarity and you get it, but then in the next scene they kind of undermine that and they undercut it, and on one level it's like, oh, that's interesting. It's interesting. Assuming it's intentional, which I do think it is.
Yeah.
But like that's an interesting take that they're purposefully making me kind of in this void, in this limbo of how I'm supposed to feel towards this character and to an extent the world. But at the end of the film, when you're kind of left in that, it also leaves you groundless, and that also makes it hard to like latch on to anything.
I mean, I think the way you kind of put it right is there are moments of empathy and sympathy that you're supposed to have with this character, but I think because it's the Joker, you flat out, they obviously know they can't leave you at that point, right? They don't want to leave you at that point for this character. And so once you get to the end, right, and he gives like this big speech and he's like viewed as the head of this uprising and he has this huge, the little man's been kicked too much, right? Like I felt that's where the message got really, really muddled, and I couldn't really decide where I felt like they wanted me to end on that line.
Yeah.
Because I definitely don't want to ever emphasize with the Joker.
Right.
Well, I don't. Yeah, well, I mean, I don't.
It's okay. So I agree with that mostly. I mean, telling a story about sympathy for the devil kind of thing, right? I mean, we all know it worked really well in Maleficent, and they're clearly trying to copycat that. Well, but on a serious note, I think I agree with you, Chris. And that's one point where I think joining that up with how Chewie was saying. How this in the continuity of the DC universe, this is a little man that got kicked too much. Is that the Joker we know from the rest of the DC universe? No, he's a man with a plan. Well, even if he says he doesn't have a plan, right?
Right. Yeah.
This guy was not a man with a plan.
The thing that I'll tell you, the thing that really rubs me the wrong way with this Joker is that it's implied from the beginning that he has mental health issues. And my favorite, if I'm going to pick an origin, my favorite version is that, he had his one bad day, which it's interesting that this movie references Killing Joke so heavily, but it kind of reverses the message of that, because that whole idea is that anyone could go through enough and break and become crazy. But, one of you were saying that he doesn't really have as much agency. It's because he's already in a bad place when the movie starts, and he's already it's already implied that he has mental health issues. And Chris, you're talking about the messages of the movie where they get muddled. I think that was one of the that was one of the ones I think that was, because there's the scenes where he gets cut off from his meds because the government can't fund therapy anymore, and there's that whole message about the upper class and the lower class and how it's hard for certain people, but so it's kind of, it feels like the movie's trying to say, oh, we should, we need to be helping people with mental issues, otherwise they're going to turn into jokers. But also at the same time, if you look at studies, like, there's not really any proof that, like, people who have mental health issues are violent. Like, there's not a correlation to that. So in a way, it kind of attaches this false, like, oh, like, this is the reason why people are violent. It's because they are mentally ill. And, there's so many, it's such a gray area issue. There's so many things that are thrown in there, and the movie kind of throws them all into a pot and mixes them up into, like, a gross gumbo. Like, it's not saying anything because it can't decide what it's trying to say. It's just
do you feel a psychopath suffers from mental illness?
Well, I mean, I do think that. Yeah, I definitely.
I think there are people that are just in a bad mental space, right? But I think the movie eventually flips, right? And it's just like, no, he's actually just been flat out a psychopath this whole time.
So that's what I was going to get to, is that, I mean, I don't think psychopath is the right word. Not that it's the wrong word, but I think it has certain implications that I think aren't helpful for the discussion. I'm not saying that.
Right.
It does sound condescending, but I don't mean it to be condescending.
None of us are licensed to talk about mental health.
Yeah. What I'm saying is that, as for the most part, they make it somewhat apparent that he has some sort of mental health issues, right? But then later in the film, they seem to go out of the way to kind of introduce an element of, like, but does he? Right. There's a couple scenes where they question, where I think it's the cops, the detectives, they bring that card out and he's like, so is that real? And he doesn't answer. And you could just take that because he's frustrated and he doesn't want to, engage with them. But when you're putting that in the film for the audience, what that also does is it undermines your trust in the narrator, as in him. So then you're like, wait, maybe he has been faking it this whole time, right? And that's that's exactly what you're talking about, Chewie, in just this terms of, like, this giant gumbo where you're now devoid of a message because you're like, wait, okay, so then it's not about mental health because he's just faking it, and he
And I actually think that aspect of it weakens the movie, but it also kind of makes it more interesting for me. And it's because
I agree.
It's because of two specific plot threads. And I want to talk about them both, unless you guys have to throw something in about that real quick. But I think there's the Zazie Beetz fake girlfriend plotline, and then there's the mother who may or may not have had an affair with Thomas Wayne plotline. And the fact, I'm really glad that you brought up the idea of, like, the unreliable narrator, right? There's so many unreliable narrators in this movie that it makes it even harder to tell what the movie's trying to tell us when the characters themselves are all unreliable and we can't trust what anybody says. And, like with the parentage issue, like, by the end of it, he's kind of like, he's told that the mother had mental health issues and she had the same kind of delusions. It's implied that she had this delusion that she slept with Thomas Wayne and had this kid, but really they're saying really he was adopted. But isn't that the kind of thing that a rich person who of, like, status in Gotham would try to sell?
I think that was the point of those scenes, was you were supposed to kind of, like, be like, I mean, was he? Or is this a cover-up, or is this real?
Okay. So I think this, going specifically to kind of a similar beat in the film, so I was under the impression, after he goes to the mental health hospital and gets her files and reads them, and he kind of realizes that he is adopted, that's not his real mom, that she's been lying to him, and then he suffocates her and kills her. I was under the impression, okay, the film has come down on she was delusional, his life is a lie. That's where the film has come down.
Right.
And that's the case. That's fine. Now we have our ground. We have a basic understanding of the truth of how this has affected him as a person. That's fine. I'm okay. Boom. I get it now. But then right before the final act or the final scene, when he's prepping in the mirror, I don't know if you guys noticed this, because the people I saw it with did not notice it, but he's looking in the mirror of his mom's room when he's putting on his Joker makeup, and he takes a picture off of her mirror that's been sitting there, and it's a picture of her young, and he flips it over, and on the back of the picture is a note that says, "I will always love your smile," or something like that.
Yeah, that's why
TW.
it's meant to be like a coin toss, right? Like, is it real or not?
But that's what I'm saying. So then at that point, it's like, oh, well, then none of them. Then what's the point of anything?
The movie wants to have its cake and eat it too, right? It wants to provide this situation where it's like, oh, it's ambiguous. You come up with your own decision. But if you're going to try to make this movie have statements, you kind of need to decide is it one way or the other. You know, I mean, ambiguity
can be good in certain ways in certain films, depending on some. But if there's ambiguity that undermines the message, I think that's where it becomes problematic.
And that's my whole issue with the movie, and that's why I say if it's implying that the Joker is mentally ill, then it means XXXX this XYZ. If it's implying that he isn't from the beginning, then it means something else entirely. And that's why I think this depiction of the Joker it's interesting and it's fun to talk about, but it also leaves me feeling kind of like, I don't know, leaves me feeling empty.
I guess to give it the benefit,
I think there's
I was just going to say, it just trying to be as, give it the benefit of the doubt. Maybe they're trying to make a statement like, well, maybe there is not such a separation between crazy and normal, and I mean, I don't, even that is kind of reaching though, because what does that mean then? I don't know. You know what I mean? Right. Like, I'm just trying to like think of like, okay, well, if they're clearly not saying has mental health problems, but they are clearly implying that he does on some level, I don't know. Now I'm just like thinking out loud and going nowhere. But
so did anyone else, before we get into the Zazie Beat whole narrative, did anybody else notice that once he got off the meds in the movie that he stopped doing the laugh, or the laugh started to taper off?
I did notice that,
sure. And that contributes to the mess of the message, because it's another element that you're supposed to go, well, now I'm even more confused as to whether it was real or not. I have no idea, because is it some kind of like, is it some kind of placebo thing that he's going through the whole movie, because his mom is leading him to believe this, or that he needs the medicine, or what? We don't, there's just too many mixed signals that are tossed throughout the whole thing.
The Zazie Beetz stuff, I did like that, except for I felt like there was a couple moments where they didn't trust the audience. They over explained that.
Yeah, like why did they did not have to give us the flashbacks showing that she wasn't there? Like, that scene could have been handled much more cleanly and elegantly if they had she walks in, sees him, and says, "What are you doing here? Why are you in my apartment?" Done. Yeah. That's all the audience needs to hear.
Yeah, exactly. I think it would have been way more powerful.
Right? I think that would have hit harder.
Then, you do that. You play a little swell of music that makes it seem creepy, and then scene's over, and you get the point. Absolutely. Yeah, and then that's another element where people are going to be like, well, anything can be fake in this movie then, right?
Yeah, like that's the thing, like, right, when you have an unreliable narrator to this degree, and it just really muddles all the waters are now murky.
But in the sense of that, putting the message of the movie aside to a degree, I think that how chaotic everything is, I think it's why I kind of like the movie so well, because it's really told from his perspective, and in his mind, that's just how chaotic everything is. And so it felt like a really good, refreshing look at like through his eyes.
I mean, I like the idea that it was all imagined, that their relationship. Don't get me wrong, I like that part of it. I just didn't like the specific beat where they. No. I mean, I get
that, but I'm also just like commenting on like the Thomas Wayne stuff and everything, right? Like just the fact that you as the viewer are so lost with him, right? You're like, you can't really pinpoint what's real or what's not, just like he can't. And so you're like right there with them, and I think that's really what draws me to it. The message of the movie aside,
right?
Yeah, no, I kind of get that. It does help you empathize with him. I think it kind of speaks to his performance, which I think we haven't really touched on yet in the discussion, but I think is so pivotal for the film as a whole. He does a really interesting job in a lot of different ways, but one of the things that I noticed the most is that he has the moments where he's his normal, like he feels like a normal guy, and it's usually in his interactions with his mom early in the film.
Right.
And there's a few other scenes throughout, but he legitimately just feels like a normal guy, you know, maybe a little sad, down on his luck, but seems to be genuine affection for his mom. But then there are so many scenes, and I don't just mean the scenes where he's like laughing uncontrollably, the obvious, more crazy scenes, but just the scenes where he's like at the comedy club and doesn't know how to act like a human, laughing at the wrong time. Like, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
And so it's just this weird clash of a character where you have these moments where he's clearly recognizable and understandable with these, you know, basic human pathos, but then these other just completely dissonant moments where it's like, he doesn't know how to be, he's like Tommy Wiseau trying to mimic humanity.
Oh my god, you're right. That is what it reminded me of a little bit. But I want to go back to and on that note, I want to go back to something I think, Sean, you said, or I can't remember who said, but earlier about like, can we imagine this Joker being the Joker that we know, right? And that's an impossible question to answer because there's so many different comic versions and movie versions and whatever. But I'm gonna pick two of them. Could you imagine this Joker becoming the Heath Ledger Joker? Like, could you imagine like such a weak, like out of his own devices guy becoming someone who could be that Joker?
Right.
Or even animated series Mark Hamill Joker, right? Like, can you imagine this Joker having the ability to become either of those characters?
Right, and that was you hit right on the head of what I was trying to get at. Is that like the versions, all the versions of the Joker that we know, right? He is. I can't imagine him becoming any of them, really. If I'm being honest, even.
I mean, yeah. I mean, if you think about it, I'm like, all right, cool. He's in Arkham. Problem solved. This guy's never going to escape. Like, you know what I mean? Like, that's kind of how I feel. I'm like, this is...
I mean, he did kill that counselor at the end.
Yeah. Or just...
I mean, sure, but I just feel like...
I can imagine him becoming the Cesar Romero.
I can too, because his suit made me think of it the whole time.
But if you think back to like when he was running away from the cops at the end, like he showed a lot of like aggressive things, like being able to blend in with the crowd and everything, starting kind of like the...
But he's reactionary. He's a survivalist.
Yeah.
He's not a guy with a plan that's gonna come. You know, like if this was another like a comic book version of the Joker when he goes on TV, what he does is he poisons the whole audience.
Right.
Right. That's what he does. He doesn't just randomly bring a gun. Who I guess he didn't get security checked. Okay, that's fine. But
there's a lot of that going on.
Yeah. You know what I mean? Like it's not the same, and that's okay, right? We don't need this Joker to be that Joker.
No, we don't
necessarily.
But on that note, for the show, his intention was to shoot himself on live air, and then he gets angry because he realizes Robert De Niro is a meanie head and changes his plans, and basically his emotions in the moment affected his entire whole thing. How's this guy going to plan a elaborate bombing on two boats with two detonations?
But to me,
you know what I mean?
To me, that's not what this Joker represents, right? This Joker, to me, is just one that is reactionary and causes just as much, if not, you know, like his just reactionary things caused the whole city to get flipped upside down, right?
So, I mean, I completely agree with everything kind of everyone has said, in that I can't imagine him being any of these Jokers. And I think that it's kind of weird because even though that's obviously supposed to be, it's a different Joker, just like every Joker is a different take on that character, there's still somewhat of a central core that we expect them to build off of, right? Otherwise, it's not that character. So it is weird when this character does not feel at all like that. But at the same time, it's like, well, I kind of like that doing something completely different. I will say, though, until the scene that made, like, this is the closest that he's come to the Joker that I know as the Joker, is when he's dancing on the stairway. Like, I think that scene is like, oh, I could see Heath Ledger doing this. I could see Jack Nicholson doing this. I could see, like, and that scene, he is so confident. Like, he embodied the confidence is such a easy word to throw at it. It's more intricate nuance than that. But just for the sake of, discussion, the confidence that comes with being the Joker boom, that was what it was in that scene.
And if I was going to say, if you'll allow me to be pedantic for a second, that same staircase is showed several times in, like, after scenes of him being kicked by society, then he has to walk up the stairs to get home.
Yeah.
It's always dark, it's always gloomy, it's always set to sad music. That scene is sunny, he's going down the stairs, he's conquered the stairs.
Yeah, there's constantly up and down visual metaphors throughout this film. And that was obviously one of the main ones, that staircase. By the way, that's wherever they filmed that was cool. I don't know how I've never seen that in a movie before. It's just a really cool location.
I also think another scene that would fit with any of the Jokers was when he finally killed that former coworker in his apartment. And then he had the scene with the I don't know what the PC term is, little person, right? The little British guy. And like that really uncomfortable scene of, he's like, you can go. But obviously, like, even you as the viewer are like, can you go? Right? Like, that's just about any Joker. That was perfect. It was a situation where everybody was being tormented, even the viewers.
Yeah, I mean, it was closer to, I think, kind of felt like Ryan was saying, reactionary. And it brings to mind this book and film. Have any of you ever seen or read Being There?
Mm-mm.
Yeah, with is that Peter Sellers?
Peter Sellers was in the movie, and so it's really interesting. And I don't know. I feel like he won Best Actor. I think it's from the late 70s. Anyways, it's a really interesting and really kind of cool book, especially in movie. Especially, it's kind of ahead of its time in terms of subject matter. But this Joker reminded me a lot of that character, and the character's name is Chauncey Gardner. But basically, it's like a less maniacal version of this Joker. Not that this Joker was even maniacal per se.
I would not call him maniacal. But like,
but basically he's this character that's kind of drifting. He doesn't have any direction. He's just kind of reacting to things happening to him. But people are taking everything that he's doing and putting so much meaning behind everything that was not intended there. Like, you know what I mean? And eventually, being there, spoilers, by the way, he becomes elected president of the United States just because he just like is sitting around and people think that he's some brilliant guy because he just kind of like wants to watch TV and they're like, he's making a metaphor about society. You know, like, and that's kind of what I felt like with this Joker. I mean, I don't know if that specific reference was intentional, but I couldn't help but thinking of that. Sorry. Anyways, that was kind of deep.
Yeah, that's a good connection. I hadn't made that connection, but yeah, he's sort of just an absent-minded, reactionary kind of guy floating through life, and things are happening to him, but to me, that's not the Joker. I agree. And again, I don't disagree with Chris either. That this is the Joker they wanted to depict, and I suppose that's all right. But I didn't see a lot of intelligence behind his actions.
I want to merge two of these ideas, though. That's the thing, is that we're kind of all a little bit in agreement that this is not the traditional Joker that we're used to, because most of the Jokers share common traits, even though there's some very different ones. And this one doesn't share a lot of those common traits. But if you're going to bother to do a Joker origin and then change so much of the character, then the logical explanation is, well, we had a reason to, we had a message that we wanted to tell, or we had this thing. But if it's about the message, then as we've already established, that message is very muddy. So that leads me into this empty spot. That's kind of where I think the emptiness feels for me.
Well, let me ask this question. Like, what do you guys think of it? Would you, and this is a hard theoretical to answer, but would you guys felt you would have liked it more if it was not a Joker movie, as in it was the same exact plot and story, but instead of at the end him saying "call me Joker," and instead of the references to Thomas and Bruce Wayne, it was just a story about this guy? You know what I mean?
I've actually asked myself that same question. Like, I'm like, wait, what really made this Joker? What made this any kind of connection to Batman? The fact that they tossed in the names Wayne. I mean, other than that, and the fact that it took place in Gotham.
We had to see Batman's
parents. I was just going to say, the fifth time of how do you guys...
For the 20th time.
Actually, it was funny because knowing going into this was going to be not at all... Like, I was actually... Disappointed is not the right word, but kind of disappointed how heavily it actually was still tied to Batman. I was like, I was told this was not going to be a Batman movie, and yet I am watching Thomas and Martha Wayne get killed for the fifth time on screen.
Yeah. So, but besides that, and like it... remove that element, and it's just It could have just been any random guy, and I'm okay with that. I think I would have maybe been less distracted by the, whatever legacy elements of the story.
Well, that's the thing. I go back to my point. Remove the Batman connections, and then you're left with a movie with a confusing message.
Mm-hmm.
If it's not trying to be the Joker, then what is the point of this then? What am I supposed to take away from it? I'm not.
But
really
I mean,
sure.
maybe
So
that was the point, though, right? That's why he wanted it to be Joker, was because people know the Joker well enough for that kind of unreliable narrator to work and not just be kind of Garbo.
Yeah. Greta Garbo.
The one thing I wanted to point out real fast is, so you guys, right, there's you guys can't really see this guy being the Joker that you know. And Ryan, I think you used the term intelligent, but I think the reason I like this Joker so much is it may not all just be intelligence, but I think this is by and far the cruelest Joker. He is very much lashing out at people. The things he does are way crueler than I think what any of the other Jokers have done.
Well, I guess. I mean, I don't
know. What do you mean by
cruel?
Well, by cruel is the things
he kills the guy in his home, maybe
are very not intent. It is reactionary, but he is intentionally lashing out at people, trying to cause them pain, right? Whereas the other Jokers, that's not their goal, right? They're intelligent. Everybody is just kind of this piece that they're moving around on a chessboard. They really have no connection to anything that they're doing.
Chris, I think you got that entirely backwards.
I mean, I don't feel like I had that.
I think it might just be you feel like maybe this helps explain it. Do you? I feel that this Joker might be way more intimate than any other Joker. Is that maybe
I mean, you can say that too, but I still
that.
think it's cruel. If you think of Heath Ledger's performance, right? Let's say the scene where he's burning the money with the mafia guys. There's no cruelty, there's no passion to what he's doing. He's so intelligent, it's all part of his plan that he's so far removed
Chris,
from this.
Boat scene. The boat scene is psychological torture.
Gordon's Funhouse. Basically everything in Killing Joke is cruel. And also you can argue that his cruelness is dampened in this movie because a lot of the violence that he enacts is in revenge for people being cruel to him. So,
but that doesn't make it less cruel.
So, I mean,
Yes,
I don't know. I want to call him cruel. Though I would say he was only.
I mean, it's only less cruel if you think an eye for an eye is not cruel.
Yeah, but that's not in and of itself. I mean, I think your definition of cruel might vary than kind of what the implication most people have of it. Because I would say the only thing that was cruel in this is when he killed the coworker in his apartment and with the little guy there.
They also made him kill the third Wall Street bro on the subway just to make that scene morally ambiguous, because you could argue the first two were self-defense, but then he chases after.
Well, that's what I'm saying, because that whole scene, it's not. Don't get me wrong here. Justified does not mean so it's not justified, but I also empathize. Yeah, I mean, there are other movies where that scene plays out and he is the hero. Have you guys ever seen The Brave with Jodie Foster? That is exactly that scene.
Oh,
I mean, she's a woman, there's other implications, but there are scenes like that where you have a vigilante. That's what the Death Wish, right? There are movies, obviously this is not those movies, but that scene in and of itself is not cruel. That isn't even the moment where I think he becomes, a villain per se, or, I'm still kind of with him at that point. Maybe I'm alone in this.
No,
again,
yeah,
I'm not justifying
that scene is
his
intended
actions.
to be sympathetic.
I mean, the moment he killed those people on the
so.
subway, even the first guy on the subway, I was completely disconnected from him. There was no more sympathy.
I mean, I guess everyone has their personal. I don't think it was justified, but I was not disconnected. Part of this is kind of getting into another topic. This film, I feel, is very, very misanthropic. It is just painting an awful picture of society. Of humanity in general. We live in a society. But just it's clearly intended to invoke these feelings of like, yeah, this is a dirty, grimy, awful world, and it's building this tension in the audience where you want someone to do something, and just like, God, these awful people, someone just get rid, do something. So I don't know. I'm not saying you're wrong, Chris, in your feelings, but I'm going to disagree and say no. I was still sympathetic towards him at that point.
And if, in terms of our opinions, that's great. But in terms of what the filmmakers were intending, I think it's pretty. Yeah. I don't want to say it's clear, right? Because we're still talking about it. Yeah. We wouldn't be talking about it if it was clear. So, in any case, I believe it was the filmmakers' intent that we should feel sympathetic at least at the first two killings because it was in self-defense.
Yeah.
And then they put the way the third one played out so that it could be ambiguous and we could talk about it. And they don't want to also have to say we side with the Joker. They want to make it more morally gray. So, I don't know. Which comes off as a little cheap to me, but it is what it is.
Yeah. Also, how many rounds did that pistol have in it?
I counted. I actually was counting. I counted 7.
Okay. It was 7 or 8, so... Yeah. I don't know. Are there revolvers that have 8 rounds? It might be possible.
I was wondering that too, but I was like, I'll chalk that up to it's a movie kind of thing. Whatever.
Yeah.
I'm being too nitpicky at that point if I'm going to complain about how many rounds were in that gun.
Are we going to start counting shots fired in John Wick film?
Actually, of all films involving a lot of guns, I would expect that to be the most, you know what I mean? Like,
they probably took the time to make sure people are going to count. We got to make sure. But kind of going back to a little bit of just like the grimy ugliness of this world, like even just like the color palette and everything about it, I thought those elements I actually liked a lot. Like it's kind of nihilistic, which I actually usually don't like in films, and wasn't my favorite part, but I do think it was actually well done.
It suits this movie well, I think.
Yeah. Even the elements like with Robert De Niro, like I loved, one of my favorite scenes is the scene before the big climax when they're on the air, but when Mark Maron and Robert De Niro come to his dressing room. Oh, yeah. I love that scene when you see Robert De Niro and he's just like a normal guy. Like, you know what I mean? Like, he's not his persona on what we've seen on TV, and he's clearly like in kind of, a normal, smart guy. He doesn't seem particularly cruel or mean. And I think that really kind of encapsulated somewhat of what the film was trying to say, maybe too, about, I don't know, just media or something.
Something there.
What's the theme behind this?
About society?
The theme is media,
society?
Yeah.
I don't know, I just really like that sequence. Yeah.
All right.
So I guess the only scene that I didn't like was when he was on the show at the end, and right before, obviously, he was supposed to shoot himself. When he starts going off on that, like, kind of almost sanctimonious rant, like, I felt like that was the only time that he went out of character. Because the whole time he spends saying, it's not about this, right? But then at the end, he starts going off on this rant about how the big man keeps the little man down, which is fine. I don't mind that as a message, but it felt out of character at that point for him.
Right, like at the end, he suddenly decides to have a purpose. I agree with that.
I mean, the thing is, I actually liked that scene. It was one of my favorite scenes in the movie, but in terms of the message, it did muddy it a lot. The more I thought about it, though, maybe I was thinking, like, maybe it's less about, like, it's him starting to believe the lies, like, for lack of a better term, the lies, but starting to believe all the hype around him. And he's just kind of, like, we're hearing his thoughts, walking him through what society is built up around this persona that he never believed to begin with, but by the end of that rant, he believes it. And that, I don't know, throughout the rest of the film, when he kind of dances on the car and kind of, it's like him, like, oh, okay, this is who I am now. Like, him kind of just, like, living, like, embracing
the chaos.
Yes, embracing this notion that has been put upon him.
Yeah, I guess I thought, well, at least what I was trying to get out of that is that for me, the thing that he wasn't getting from life, it was acceptance or visibility, right? He's invisible. Mm-hmm. And he says that earlier, right, to the public service agent, right? Where he says, I wasn't visible until whatever it was last week when he shot the people, right? And to me, that's what I thought was his sorrow thread, is that he wanted to feel accepted, feel seen, and now his moment on the end of at the end of the movie, and he's dancing in the vehicle, is like, oh, I found a vehicle to be accepted, and this was never my intent. I never had a plan, but there are people who will accept me if they see me as that person.
I think that's closer to
Yeah. I mean, I and again, maybe we're giving them too much credit. I don't think so. I want to give them the benefit of the doubt, but I agree that I feel like that, if anything, that is the most resonant. That's the most kind of true to form in terms of the character interpretation that I've heard. So
yeah,
well, thank you.
I would say so. I think that's the closest we're going to get to unmixing this gumbo. That's not a thing you do with gumbo. I don't know. What do you do with gumbo?
You unmix
it. You separate it out into...
Well, it's like a hipster LA restaurant where it's the different...
Deconstructed
Here's
gumbo.
a gumbo, deconstructed gumbo.
You said gumbo, and I took a breath in through my nose, and I thought I smelt gumbo for a moment.
Oh, no. That's... I don't know. You might want to get that checked.
It's a cool superpower.
That means you're having a stroke.
And then have people smell
you might want to get an MRI, Chris.
Yeah.
Also, this isn't just a question. So it's funny how important the dancing is. Like, I don't know if I just thought it was like really strange isn't the right word, but just like, I don't know, endearing and odd and like, but also somewhat like authentic, how important like his dancing is for what, like in the script, I could imagine the script is the Joker dances or something, right? And how much they basically probably, I don't know this, but probably just left it up to Joaquin to just like, I'm going to do, this is what he's doing. This is what his choice is. And then they just go with that. And then they probably upplayed it because of how he probably played it in the first scene they filmed. Yeah, exactly. Right. And by the end of it, it's so important when he's dancing on the car at the end. And just like, you could track his arc as a character almost based on his dancing. Yeah. I don't know. I just thought it was really interesting.
Yeah. It was a little Nicholson-esque and a little Romero-esque as well.
Maybe it is blending. Also, man, what is the... Does he have like weird gargoyle wing bones or something? Joaquin Phoenix.
Yeah. I was hoping that wouldn't come up because I didn't want to think about it.
well, that it's funny because when I've told a couple people about the film when they've asked me, and that is one of the things. The first, like the top 3 things I'll say is that, man, he's got this gnarly body. Let's get ready for this.
It is
thing.
Nauseating to look at.
Yeah.
Get ready. Prepare your stomach.
Yeah.
Take some Tums before you see this movie.
Yeah.
All right. I think probably okay to wrap it up unless you guys have any other gigantic earth-shattering observations about this film. I don't know.
Real fast, favorite scenes?
Actually, yeah, let me go real quick because I was going to bring this up anyway.
Yeah.
My favorite scene, and a scene that I think captures for me the emotionally confusing experience that I had in this film, is the scene where he's performing as a clown in the children's hospital. Mm-hmm. And he's dancing around and he's singing "If You're Happy and You Know It," I think, right?
Yeah.
And at the end of it, he drops the gun. Okay, right? And it's super awkward and it's embarrassing. And he picks up the gun and he puts his finger to his lip like, "Shh, it's a secret." And like, what was your guys' reaction to that? Because I wanted to laugh, but I was so embarrassed for him, and then also confusing because the way that scene was shot, it was they let the camera roll for a very long time, and so you're already uncomfortable because of that. And to me, just like all these conflicting emotions, I think that scene was really well done, but also just again captures that emotional confusion, state of emotional confusion that much of the film was for me.
It made me sick. It made me nauseated a little bit. Yeah, it was uncomfortable.
I mean, I hadn't thought as heavily about that scene. It was very striking, but that's a good point. How much it lingered there, because now that you're describing it, like it's very vivid how much it does. But as I was watching it, I don't remember. Like, it wasn't one of the scenes I walked out of the theater going back to immediately.
Yeah, I don't know. For some reason, that scene I think stuck in my mind probably more than any other. Which is odd because it wasn't any of the other gruesome naked body walking Phoenix scenes. So,
all right. I like the subway scene because all the business bros knew the entire lyrics to "Send in the Clowns," which implies that they're all big musical theater buffs. They're all big Stephen Sondheim fans, and they've seen a lot of Broadway.
Yeah.
Sean?
Favorite scene? Oh, that's rough. I guess I did I really liked his dancing on the stairwell. Like, partially because I think it is the closest to what, like, there was a moment of not catharsis, but almost like triumph that at that point he is clearly a villain, so it's not that I empathize with him anymore, but there's a moment of triumph where it feels like, he's become the Joker. And that sounds so, like, postery and fake and film CEO-y, but it was effective for me. When just that level of confidence, and also mixing in what we're talking about with the visual metaphor of the stairwell, him finally kind of going down the stairs, and the dancing that we've seen throughout the film, and just like the color palette, even at that point, like, he has the suit on, but it's not the traditional purple suit. It's just slightly off color, and it just matches what he's been wearing up until then. Like, I don't know. I think for his, and even the music, which when this first, what was the music? I forgot what the song was.
Rock and Roll Part 2.
Yeah, I just thought it was such a strange choice that somehow was oddly fitting. So, I don't know, I really like that scene a lot. And there were other scenes. I did like the talk show scene at the end, and there's a lot of other stuff. But that one stands out.
Okay. And
Chris?
I mean, my favorite scene is when he kills the coworker, like I said before. But one scene I also really liked that we never brought up was the scene where he visits Wayne Manor.
Oh, yeah, that's a good one, too.
Yeah, I almost said that one, yeah.
That one was so awkward. The whole interaction with young Bruce and everything. Also, Bruce sliding down the little bat pole. I thought that was kind of cute.
I thought that was the reference. I didn't know if that was too much of a stretch, but I thought that at least.
But that man, like, that kid was very awkward, right? And the Joker, obviously, you can feel like that building jealousy, right? Like right off the bat, you just like this little kid.
And so it's those weird moments where, like, in a film that, as much as possible in general, you want to have emotional trueness to how characters react. There's always moments that are so kind of weirdly odd and disturbing, like when a grown man puts his fingers into a child's mouth and lets him forcibly. Like, is this realistic? I don't know, but it's kind of weird and disturbing, and it fits. Like, I like it. Like, I don't like it, but I like it in this scene, in this film, at this moment. Yeah. Also, just we didn't touch upon, but the idea that the Joker and Batman are half brothers is kind of a cool idea. Even, I mean, it doesn't ever explicitly say that, but I don't know. It's interesting,
but I'm glad they left it ambiguous because
I am too.
But it also rubs me the wrong way a little bit. So I'm glad that it's not definitive. So, yeah.
Well, I thought that was maybe at least pseudo strongly implied because they're both orphans and they both react to their circumstances in opposite ways.
Right.
Yeah, that's true.
That's another good scene.
Well, that was our Joker discussion. It was interesting for sure, confusing definitely, but a quality film. I think people should watch it because it's something that they're probably not going to see anything else like, but they might not like it.
Yeah, I would say that's true. I would say that's true. Yeah, but again, well made piece of cinema. I would say.
Yeah, I agree. But tell us what you thought. I'd love to hear anyone's and everyone's thoughts on the Joker, especially the Joker, because it was all of those things I just said. So if you do have thoughts, please write to us on any forms of social media. Facebook. I think we have a Twitter. Maybe we don't.
I don't think we use it.
Yeah, we don't use it. But or just email. Probably you should email us because then you get your email read on our next episode. And you can email us at yumchunks@gmail.com. And do all the following things. You could listen to us on all places where podcasts are listened to. And the next coming up, we got the holiday season. Well, not quite holiday, but marathon of actual films that are worth talking about has begun. Hopefully,
I'll probably be on not so many until at least Terminator. I think that'll probably be the next one that I show up on, because good or bad, I'm sure I'll have thoughts about Terminator.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure we'll do Terminator.
I'd like to do The Lighthouse.
All right, well.
Oh, that one looks cool. I wouldn't mind doing Gemini Man. I don't know. We'll see.
Gemini Man?
There's things that are coming out that I think we will be talking about. So it won't be 2 months before our next episode. So stay tuned. Hear our thoughts on things. And I don't know. What else? Chris, tell them what else they should do.
That's life.
Smile? Why serious?
No.
What's
he say?
He says that's
put
life.
A smile on your face.
Send in the clowns. Send them on in here. All right.
Okay. All right. Thanks for listening, everyone.
Have a good time. Goodbye.
Bye.
This has been
After the Credits.
a Young Chunks podcast.